Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into an ancient, genuinely profound philosophical monologue from the Mahabharata. We're going to explore this eternal, universal struggle between fate, chance, and our own free will. Specifically, we'll be looking closely at a really fascinating conversation where the character Draupadi makes a passionate, incredibly logical case to Yudhishthira about exactly how we should operate in the world. And you know what's amazing here? It's how surprisingly modern her argument is. This isn't just dusty ancient history, right? It's a razor-sharp, highly practical framework for understanding why we do what we do. It's honestly a masterclass in how we should measure our own success and failure in our everyday lives. So let's just start right at the heart of the ultimate human dilemma that Draupadi presents. It's a question I'm sure we've all asked ourselves, maybe after a major setback or even a sudden, unexplainable stroke of luck. Are we just victims of our circumstances, kind of floating along on the tides of destiny? Or are we the true architects, the actual masters of our own fate? To answer this, we're going to walk through her remarkably structured argument step by step. We'll decode a framework that is literally just as applicable to your life today as it was thousands of years ago. To start untangling this massive question of fate versus free will, we really have to look at the first main pillar of Draupadi's philosophy, and that is the absolute inevitability of action. Her core premise is that action is the default state of the universe. She illustrates this beautifully using natural examples that just make immediate sense. Think about a newborn calf. It instantly seeks its mother's milk without anyone ever teaching it how. Or a crane, right? It hunts in the water out of pure instinct. She even points out that the creator and ordainer of the universe itself is continuously acting. Her argument is basically that only completely immobile things can exist without acting. For anything that possesses consciousness, if it doesn't act, its very course of life becomes impossible. So action isn't just some choice we get to opt out of. It's the fundamental requirement of existence. This leads to a rather stark warning about the profound danger of inaction. The text essentially says that someone who simply waits for destiny is as fragile as unbaked clay dissolving in a river. Take a second and just visualize that. If you place an unburnt earthen pot into flowing water, it doesn't just fail to hold water, it completely disintegrates. It melts away. That is her explicit warning to those who just lie at ease, relying solely on some pre-written destiny to come along and save them. Inaction isn't just hitting the pause button, it's actively decaying. If you abandon action, you are inviting your own destruction simply because you're refusing to participate in the basic mechanics of life. Okay, so that brings us to the second pillar of her argument. If we absolutely must act to survive, what actually determines whether those actions lead to success or failure? Draupadi breaks this down into a really fascinating triad. 3 specific forces govern the outcomes of our lives. First, you have destiny. Think of this as the hand you're dealt based on past acts or providential dispensation. Next up is chance. This is entirely spontaneous. We're talking about those totally random events where you acquire something without any direct cause or personal effort on your part whatsoever. And finally, there's exertion. This is your present effort. It's your intellect, your ability, and the actual sweat equity you are putting in right now. Now here is the absolute crucial insight. Success depends on a union of these circumstances. It's kind of like a giant puzzle. You need a combination of these forces to achieve a result. But your personal exertion is the largest, most critical piece of the puzzle, and it's the only one you actually control. Draupadi argues you can't rely on just one of these paths to success. Sure, sometimes you get things from destiny. Sometimes you get lucky with chance. But the most crucial things in life are obtained by exertion. Without exertion, even if destiny and chance are perfectly aligned in your favor, success simply doesn't happen. Exertion is the engine. She uses this wonderfully vivid analogy here. Intelligent people know that oil is naturally inside sesame seeds and curds are inside milk. But without the physical action and the right tools to extract them, all that potential is entirely wasted. Just knowing the potential exists isn't enough, right? You have to ignite the fuel. You have to apply the effort. The world is absolutely full of latent value, much like the oil just waiting inside a sesame seed. But action is the only extraction mechanism. Without action, you're literally just staring at a seed, wondering why you don't have any oil. So let's look at how this builds into 2 starkly different lifestyles. On one hand, you have the idle man, who relies totally on fate. On the other, the intelligent man, who uses action to bend reality to his will. Take the idle man. Because he thinks destiny or chance will just magically provide, his life quickly becomes one of weakness and helplessness. And Draupadi points out something incredibly practical. Even if this man started with a hoard of wealth as huge as a mountain, if he only spends and never acts to earn, that mountain will eventually be exhausted. The math just doesn't work. Conversely, the intelligent man knows he's the cause of his own work. He sets a purpose, uses his intellect, achieves prosperity, and ultimately cancels his debts to the world. But we have to address the elephant in the room, which brings us to the third pillar. What happens when the intelligent man does everything right, puts in all that exertion, but still fails? To explain this, Draupadi uses the analogy of a tiller, or a farmer. This perfectly illustrates the boundary between what we control and what we just have to surrender to the universe. Think about the farmer's process. Step 1, he plows the soil. Step 2, he sows the seeds. These are acts of pure exertion. He is using his skill, his time, and his heavy physical labor. But then he has to sit silent and wait for the clouds. The clouds are completely out of his hands. They represent chance and destiny. They are the external circumstances that are absolutely required to help those seeds grow. Here is where the real wisdom kicks in. If the clouds don't bring rain, the farmer is absolved from all blame. Because he exerted himself fully, he never indulges in self-reproach. Honestly, this is a monumental shift in how we view failure. If his crops fail because the clouds didn't favor him, he doesn't tear himself down. He can look in the mirror and simply say, "What others do, I have done." He recognizes that success requires that union of circumstances, and since he provided the most critical element, his own hard work, he remains emotionally and spiritually intact. He is free from that heavy, destructive burden of self-blame. And that naturally leads us to the resolution of her argument. It's a deeply comforting yet very empowering conclusion about how we should measure our own efforts in a world that is frankly full of variables we don't control. So even though success is never mathematically guaranteed because chance and destiny are always in play, exertion remains our only logical choice. Why? Because the very act of trying cancels our debts and removes self-blame. Draupadi advises that if success seems impossible, your action at least seeks to remove the difficulties barring your way. But more profoundly, working hard cancels your debt to the universe, to your friends, and to yourself, whether you win or lose. Despair is ultimately useless because you just can't control the clouds. In fact, she warns that self-disparagement is the real enemy of prosperity. Your self-worth needs to be tied to your effort, not just the unpredictable harvest. Knowing all of this, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Knowing that the universe might throw a wild chance and stubborn destiny in your way, will you still choose to plow your field today? This ancient text isn't just telling us to work hard. It's literally giving us permission to forgive ourselves when things don't work out, as long as we put in the honest effort. The oil is in the sesame, the curds are in the milk, and the field is waiting for your plow. It's up to you to act.